All right. My original intentions for the living world itself, way back when, before we switched our focus to Syrik, I was just working on my free time, would be more of a central hub, a setting for the players to return to after missions that they take up, or or just places they've encountered. Essentially, if you play the MMO on Dungeons and Dragons Online, they have the basic setting like the towns that you can travel into, and uh, hub for RP and talking with other players. And when you actually go on missions, you group up with your party, and then you're in your own uh, secluded environment, your own quest purpose, exactly. Essentially, um, there are obviously exceptions, even in the MMO, where it might be in a larger dungeon where there's multiple adventuring groups. But that was my intention, and to tie it in somewhat of a way to that, the original plan was to have every player be a member of the adventuring guild, like a worldwide adventuring guild. That one of the basic signifiers for this guild was like a guild seal akin to like Fable, where the guild seal can be used to teleport you to and from your quest locations, so you wouldn't have to worry about travel time or um like missing out on certain things because you can return to the RP side of things whenever, but you're at your mission as needed. And then the DMs themselves would be able to limit the seal itself as necessary for their mission to keep the story appropriate, basically allowing RP lock. Um, but overall, it would give a in-universe reason as to why someone can suddenly be in, say, Stormreeve when they were previously in Baruja. Um, I still have interest in that idea, but we haven't really gone to the part of discussion still, I guess, right now, where we would discuss such things. Though any greater discussion on that would require another Sunday meeting for people to all give their input on it. Um, all right, you're just typing down my responses. Got it, got it. Yeah. Now, eventually, I would like it to be more of a fully open world, but
Still good to have these notes down so that we have a good roadmap. Like the transporting stuff is pretty huge.
indeed,
Could be a big central mechanics where people don't have to worry about missing RP unless their mission reaches an RP locked section.
indeed. Um, yeah, regarding the MMO thing, that's I do have interest in that area, but that requires resources to fully give it the proper treatment that an MMO style would require. So let's see here. Player actions: what players can do with the world, and how can they do it? Obviously, they can play missions. Um, well, we are not really sure what variance
That
means in this regard.
big part of this roadmap is kind of just shedding our older origins and being able to set realistic expectations for a starting point in our eventual goals.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha, gotcha. Um, yeah, regarding canonity, my intention is that all players, per their application to become a player, will be implementing a backstory as part of that must be approved. So players themselves will be canon as they're uh, give gained access to the world. Their impacts upon missions will also be canon. Um,
So a much more personal kind of living world.
yes, the big thing here is that main campaigns, which I mean any DM can really run so long as it's not going to be like, oh, you're not myself or like a region head, you can still run a campaign. It just needs to be approved by missions, which, I mean, I'm open to approve a lot of things. So, um, any of the campaigns, though, can be pretty world altering, I'd say. So, players can do a lot of changes. They can definitely impact the world, I'd say. Um, for example, my players, my Sunday group, which I would use the same systems in place where players can interact with worlds and adjust things as see fit. Uh, they are probably going to change Kalbesh drastically from its original design, in that the king, who is currently on the throne, will probably be overthrown. Um, Probably be a massive civil war, and I don't know if it's going to be run by devils or like devil worshippers going forward, or if it's going to be a bit more of the nature themed but still power metal. We'll see. Either
I
it's going to
actually
be.
have some thoughts on that, and the potential way to implement it.
Hmm?
While having front-to-back approval for missions, we could have basic guidelines, a channel for people to shoot ideas and see if anything stands out as too wild, and finally a third backup system of retcon as needed.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely implement something like that. Let's see here. RP in the Discord, limitations, actions, RP lock, bubbling, exiting. Um, Standard fade to black stuff. We don't need any of crazy stuff in that regard. Um, Etiquette, I would say, would be to, if you are in a conversation with someone else, give them a chance to respond before you just blap down, here's what I do. Essentially, standard play by post etiquette, especially if it's a bit more of a dicey situation. Not necessarily PvP, but more of a not really giving someone else a chance to respond because you type like 100 words a minute compared to someone who types like 20. Um, Actions, RP lock, bubbling, exiting. For actions, I mean, they should be able to do a decent amount of what they would normally be able to do in play. Um, there's obviously some limitations there, and that is it is dependent on the RP events team themselves or the availability of part-time dungeon masters who can, if players like, I want to go into this building, and RP events is basically saying, oh, it's locked up, and you can see there's guards outside. Um, that would probably require a part-time DM to run a little heist mission, for example, because that's not something one can just easily roll a dice and get away with. But I would be open to such
Limitations are
actions.
more as in how much can they impact the world during just general RP, like can they start fights or trigger NPC responses, so on. I see, so more of IC handling.
Gotcha. Um, Regarding RP impacts, that one would be dependent on the situation at hand and the availability of RP event Steam itself. But players' RP actions can definitely impact the world. I mean, just by their very existence. A player, if they interact with another player who's perhaps on a mission, they could inform them, oh, I've done some research on manticores. Oh, I'm on a mission for manticores. What did you know? And then suddenly they can provide them the information about manticores, and they would know in character about this. Or perhaps they are in a ball and they would find an NPC who's a VI NPC, and suddenly that VI NPC now favors their faction. Things of that nature. It could definitely happen. RP lock, bubbling, exiting. RP lock definitely will have some form of existence. I don't know how often we'll use it, but we'll have some form of existence. Bubbling, the idea that I've had going forward with like downtime days, it kind of ties into bubbling, and time passage in universe is that every week.
Hang on for a second, going to get this note down.
Gotcha.
is a more fleshed out explanation of the three-part system.
It's fair. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I would add on to the three-part system that um, when getting mission approval, it does not need to be a write-up sent in. Uh, Merely concepts and an overall path for the mission itself.
Comparatively to the old system, this doesn't bottleneck nearly as much since it's largely retroactive and self-handled on the first two.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can stick mission approval as a step 0, and basically just bounce ideas off.
I mean, pretty much.
Do you need anything else from me before I head out?
Nope, you're all good.
Okay, y'all have a good one.
You do. All right. Where was I at? Involving downtime days. Oh yes, I remember now. In terms of
Sorry, had to get those notes down back to the DTD.
indeed, in terms of the timeline, my intention is it will be multiples of 7 for every week's update time passage. Essentially, every in-world day can be translated to an in-game day. In real world day can be translated to an in-game day, or multiples of it. So, like if you have one day in, for us, it might be 2 days in game. If we decide to do like 14 days past this week, but it will be multiples of 7 to keep it so the timeline can be fairly another word for it, not continuity, but general concept of that. In addition, these days themselves are of their own form granting of downtime. So, for example, if you're getting 7 days for that week, that would be 7 days worth of, if you're not doing any missions, you're not doing anything, 7 days worth of essentially downtime. Downtime, however, per the crafting rule sets and training rule sets and all these other rules I have out there, is 8 hours a day. And since the crafting systems and the training systems are all based upon hours multiplied into various forms of day, it is essentially limited in that regard. Though there are certain feats, such as the Master Crafter, which does boost your downtime limit for a day from 8 to 12 hours, basically letting Master Crafters craft a little bit faster. Part of the new crafting system update I've been working on, the make it a bit more streamlined. Goes into a bit more detail in that regard, but it's still early work in progress. So,
Thoughts on that note?
progress the world in time arbitrarily instead of a strict X days IRL to a Y days in world with events progression gradually. So akin to the old server, essentially.
Not quite. Old server was always 1 week with occasionally added time, right?
The old server was pretty much just whatever they felt at the time. So it might have been 3 days one week, might have been 7 days another, might have been 8 days, might have been 5, might have been 1, might have been 0.
That's cursed.
Yeah.
To be fair, we also had to rely on like stream games, not like ending the world the day of. So
Mm-hmm.
that didn't exactly help our DDT days.
It's true. Yeah, like I definitely think events should adjust the time scale that we're adjusting it by, but keeping it on a 7 day basis or some
No, I was
variation of that.
thinking more like when a certain number of missions get completed, we cycle over and continue on to the next week. So it's still a time progression but instead in a period. Hard to describe.
Oh, okay, that could be a bit more doable. Where time itself is based upon missions completions. That definitely something we can discuss. I would say in a grander meeting, so people can all give their input on it. But certainly an interesting concept.
Actually, I basically just interrupted you saying something I was just thinking. Like 1 week in world is the period, and once all the missions inside are determined, then we move to the next.
I mean, that seems to be a decent concept, yeah. Yeah. Kind of going in with the downtime bits in terms of shopping and selling. Once this economy system I've been working on gets a bit further down the line, that would allow downtime days to be spent shopping or selling to NPCs or players themselves trading with one another, utilizing their downtime days because it does take time to haul all this stuff and other things. But that system I think worked all right enough for our needs back in the day. So in terms of canonization, prestige, influence, all that good stuff, I believe there is a work in progress version of influence and prestige. So that one, I have my own ideas. I haven't really looked at them in a while, but I do want players' actions in the universe to expand upon their own fame, their own influence, and their canon in general. So it's already a thing.
Speaking on time progression, actually, I think that actually relates a lot with our thoughts on dungeon masters and running games.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get my thoughts on that first before we get to the rest.
All right.
Here we go, let me know if anything is unclear.
Alright, let's see here. So, overall, regarding DM quotas and all that, uh, obviously we have the part-time DMs, which just do what you're suggesting. I think with the basic 3 games a month quota that we have currently, that by itself, I wouldn't really consider it a quota so much as just it's probably going to happen. As with our designation of having games be more party based, so like a DM will generally be running with the same party for a while. The party might, fix that DM's adventure paths or whatever they're doing throughout it, but for the most part, you'll probably be in that general selection for a while. And with that story thread being fairly consistent, prepping is much easier, and these quotas are much easier to attain. So I wouldn't really consider it a quota so much as just it's probably going to happen. Um, that said, having the at least 3 games a month does give us a benefit for those who are able to give us more essentially content, because otherwise, um, if for example there's no quota and someone DMs once just to get a character slot, that is something another character that DMs who are more consistent have to worry about. So the quota is there for purposes of uh, maintaining some consistency in our
Oh yeah,
game
character
schedule.
slots, I forget about that.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. I guess having it be less of a quota and more of a benefit tier.
Yeah, it's definitely a benefit here because with part-time GMs, you can just run whenever you want to. It's that was the intention of that one, to help mitigate these issues. Of people are like, I can only run once a week or once a month, or maybe I can run like 5 times in 1 month because I'm a little crazy. Uh, or you're like me and you're running way too many games in a week, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. So overall, I think they're keeping the current DM and then part-time DM system is important to maintain the.
Actually, wait, what if instead of becoming a DM or part-time DM, it's just something they get when they're at that tier, and if you can't maintain it, you just get dropped down?
Oh yeah, no, that's the
No
intention.
differences in status or ability to contribute to the world.
Yeah, no, that is my intention. I know during the conversations with Chris and whatnot, it was intended that the part-time DMs had less responsibilities and were not as the same training level. But I want all DMs to be on the same page in terms of what they can do uh, and what impact they can have. So, yeah, that.
Okay, that makes way more sense. I don't think it got clarified. Yeah, you should only be having responsibilities if you join up a department.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Relating to my campaigns, strict time progression between them all. What do you mean by strict time progression between them all? Like, do they all jump like 6 days after a certain time, or?
Yeah, like after a week IRL and you run one session for every game. Are they all moving along the timeline simultaneously, or is it more fluid, like they might be years apart in world?
It's more fluid. For example, the Lost Fable campaign I run on Sundays, they're set in the year 26, 34, 26, 26 something. While the Pirate campaign is set in the year 70 years after Lost Fable takes place, as is the Borussia campaign. And then Vazia is set about the same time as Lost Fable, or the Ghost campaign is set about the same time as Lost Fable, but they are somewhat off kilter in terms of when they're currently in play. For example, Lost Fable is nearing the end of December, while Ghosts is still in the middle of December.
Do you ever need to realign the timelines with time skips?
Generally, I don't need to do that too often. I do grant downtime days if I'm feeling, oh, I don't really have anything content-wise going on right now because there's nothing major happening, or I need something to happen from this other campaign that it would impact this group without causing too much of a shift in what's going on. But for the most part, the campaigns, I run them in different regions for a purpose, and that purpose is so if one campaign is fairly different on the timeline, it won't really impact the others, because I tend to keep my stories centralized towards the region or the continent. That way it's not really going to cause too many issues if they are, like months or even years apart. There is one exception to that, though, is if I know that my campaigns are going to have drastic worldly impacts, I will denote when those will occur as they are determined, and then apply them as necessary during the campaigns. For example, Ghosts is dealing with the Age of Omens and its beginning, and they're essential to have the gods fall, like the huge impact that's going to change the current era of the world on the 5th of January, which Lost Fable is about to hit. So they're technically going to see that before Ghost sees it, which is going to be a little interesting, I feel, because Sky is in both games. It'll be fine. Let's see here. I shall wait for your response.
Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. Mm-hmm. And regarding my campaigns, I will probably tend to focus mine outside of the Living Worlds regions just to help uh, avoid any difficult situations. such as, like, oh, this major event happened weeks before the living world experienced it, type of thing. But it's shouldn't be too much of an issue. My games tend to be fairly focused. With the games that are currently running in living world regions, specifically the Bruges campaign, that one is fairly centralized to its current storyline. I don't think it will impact living world by much, though it will give them, some nice backdrop to the region itself. As that campaign I have built as a showcase, essentially, of the region for the living world's purpose. But if the living world does kick off and the group continues on beyond the current planned storyline, then that is when I will start discussing with the DM team about essentially doing what DMs will be doing with the living world, where we're like, here's what's going to happen. This might impact these things. This might impact those things. Yep. Mm-hmm. Indeed. Let's see here. Where is it? It is. Regarding player interactions with each other, specifically, the answer to the how can they do it is yes. All of the above. They can make their own factions, they can make their own alliances, make their own adventuring parties, which kind of ties into going in with the same DM for most of the time, or working together as a team and going with other DMs if they see fit. Politics, they can definitely do some political shenanigans, which is why we need to have a political department. Which is why we have a political department. Subterfuge, what the political department is currently working on is a subterfuge system, as well as a PvP system. We already have designs for economy and trading. And Sultan made the macro and sent it to me for my uses in the living world or for our campaign, because we're doing a pirate campaign and trade will be pretty prominent for them. So they're not like making it for the living world so much as they made it for their games and they're like, here, you can use this, which I will then take and modify for our uses. So my current idea is that the world economy, it'll be a mix of both, essentially. There will be the world economy, wherein, on average, buying from the world will cost more, selling will grant you less coin. Which basically encourages players to craft and to sell their own wares because they can make more money themselves by selling it, and players can pay less money themselves by buying it from players. It's definitely a mix of both, but I want to have a baseline economy from the world that players can utilize as they see fit. And obviously with the adjustments from the economy system that Sultan has provided me, that will influence some of those values. For example, it might be cheaper to go and buy crafting materials from some cities than it would be to buy it from a player, but that's going to be a bit more of like a rare occasion. Taxation will definitely be a thing on the worldly economy, not the player economy, though taxation might get into that. I don't know if we want to make it that complicated for players for selling their own wares, but if they join a guild, they will definitely be taxed. That is one of the things with the factions.
Oh my god, are we going to make the Adventurers Guild legalized tax evasion?
Be funny.
Oh, are we gonna have the IRS, but they're armed guards?
Yes.
Also, no, I meant more the reasoning why they would do player economy instead of the world economy.
Well, the reason why players would do player versus world is that they can get more money out of it, and they can add more of their own spin to things, because the world economy will not have easily accessible custom-made items. The player economy will, because crafters will, I'm sure, exist, and they will want to sell their crafted wares or use their crafted wares. Especially with Artificer being an available class, though I do intend to do some modifications to that class, because it's not exactly the best for a living world.
Exactly, I meant in character why that would happen, and the easiest explanation would be prices are higher and sales are lower with the world economy because of taxes, but doing it with each other isn't taxed.
Yep. Part of that, what could be, is for universe explanation as to why doing it with each other is not taxed, is because, as you were saying, Adventurers Guild. But any guild itself has fees to it. And these fees themselves tend to go towards paying for the benefits that they're gaining from the guild. The Adventurers Guild fee itself, which would not really be a fee for the guild, I'd say, if we do just have a basic adventuring guild that everyone's part of. It would be more of a, here's your living expense for the month. So after, a full month of in-universe time, they would spend 10 silver, and that would cover their taxes, essentially, because it's their guild fees. The guild pays the guild taxes.
Automatically take a cut from missions that you take. Easy peasy, players don't have to think about it.
Yep. We could do it that way. Definitely a benefit living world. So just occurs. The Adventurer Guild is one that I've been heavily debating for a while. Just we haven't gotten to the point of discussing with the team, so but this will definitely bring it up for the team. Mm-hmm. Yeah, another reason why crafting is going to be much cheaper is because if, for example, you look at the armor crafting system that I have posted on World Anvil, you'll notice it has prices for market value, for craft value, for material craft value, and I think there's a third value that lists. And the prices there are fairly drastic. So like a crafter, if they have all the materials themselves from harvesting it, or basically they didn't spend a single coin because they found an iron vein and mined the iron out of it, and then they smelted it themselves because they own the smeltery and all these other things. They can spend copper to the gold, essentially. So it can get pretty lucrative, though I wouldn't say exactly that value, but because mundane items aren't really going to net you a big profit. Magical items are on a similar scale in that they are certainly more lucrative for you to craft them yourselves and then sell them. they're nowhere near as a copper to gold. They're more of like a silver to gold, or like a half gold to gold. You know, that definitely encourages it as it is there. Players can make their own economy. Staff rolls.
Looking at all these notes, man, we're really such world-building nerds.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I spend ages just crafting economy systems and building up the world, so. Like, I have the current crafting system has gone through so many changes. Like, some of my Pathfinder work is heavily influenced into this book. And I do eventually want to add some of the other Pathfinder crafting systems I made. For example, I made a ship crafting system so players can build their own ships. I do want to translate that into 5e so people can use that for naval combat. You know, good stuff.
Hopefully this is a useful concept breakdown for us to get a roadmap up.
Indeed.
Also added in a new subcategory above player interactions. Let's go over that before the staff rolls point.
Gotcha. Is that the discussion topic 1, or is that somewhere else?
It's up in the bullet point list, but I'll transfer it down one SEC.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is something mentioned in your to-do list too, so it's basically just figuring out some more details of what systems and what we're doing with them.
Gotcha, gotcha. Good question. Yes. I do want to use the Google Doc sheet, or perhaps some form of similarly custom design sheet, as World Anvil itself, their sheets aren't the best. Especially when you add the number of players required for Living World, that will start causing the World Anvil itself to start bogging down, and people's availability to actually access the site will be drastically reduced. So having a Google Sheet, which is
Offsite is best, and we can also just directly parse documents that are off World Anvil.
Indeed. As for Avray Discord integration, I do want to integrate with Avray into Discord. I'm not the most bot savvy. I'm just trying to figure out if we can link a custom Google Sheet character sheet into Avray, because I know it will work with Google Sheet character sheets that they've made for. It can. Cool. And once we get it set up to Avray, then we're 100% going to be using Avray in Discord. Yeah, the big thing is I have a lot of homebrew, so I couldn't exactly just use D&D Beyond. Otherwise, I'd probably be like D&D Beyond. Verification, do we need a department for this? Maybe lump in with the character.
We might have to adjust it. Alternatively, we can assign the tech team to it, especially since you're willing to pay for the work/hosting.
Indeed. Yeah, tech team can get the integration set up or whatnot, and for verification purposes, the character backstory department or whatnot can do it. Yeah. I mean, I don't really think it'll be too much of an issue for verification, especially since I do plan to spice up the character sheet a bit further, so it has restricted menus, so you can only choose certain things, essentially, so you can't just type in whatever you want in some of the fields. For example, if you want to, for the ability score themselves, I'm going to have it be a drop-down menu using the point buy system, so you cannot actually give an incorrect field or incorrect value in one of those fields. So it's a bit, it'll be easier on the verification team. Yeah, it will certainly still have some free responses, such as like what feats they have, unless I want to get super crazy and add every single feat in the game to that drop-down menu. But yeah. I'm not the most savvy with Google Forms for that level, but if tech team can do it, then, it could work.
On a side note for characters, how do we want to handle scheduling exactly?
I know we discussed this previously, wherein ultimately ended up going towards the previous system for initial scheduling, using our bot though, rather than the forms and whatnot. Once the teams are assigned, they can obviously choose to stick with the DM and continue the story, or continue on back into the wider world and find
As for character
missions.
creation, remember how in the old place there was the character creation channel, but a form would be much better?
Yeah.
Also, good point, need to add scheduling to the discussion topics, thank you.
Well, technically we can use the bot to make the games, like how I did for mine for Thursday's game. The only issue is how do we tell who's played a game and who hasn't is the bigger issue.
Gotcha.
Which requires someone to obviously keep track, kind of like Roman did.
Yeah.
But the overall making of the game is pretty easy because you can edit it as is, and people can sign up. It's just we have no way to tell who's played in a game.
So that actually
previously.
would be fairly easy to set up, I believe, even utilizing the bot. We would just need to add an additional role, and that role would be essentially exhausted or whatever we want to call it. The role of I played a game this week, or whatnot. Whenever a player participates in the game, we would just, toggle a box and give them the role. Or for them to accept the mission itself, they'd have to toggle the box as a reactive role to be able to actually join the mission. That way we have less work on our end, putting it to the players themselves to essentially do the thing. So it would be fairly easy to implement. And if we have that role assigned to them...
This also depends on time progression a lot.
Yeah.
If it's a period system, then it'd be pretty easy to just assign roles if they've played a mission or not.
But the biggest thing I'm bringing up for is because worst case scenario, if we do have to go back to Google Sheets and stuff, at least the bot works for people signing up for a game, so you know who to pick from.
Yeah.
Which is honestly a better step up from the Verum stuff, given the amount of shit Roman did, which is a huge help on our end. But it does still have like the tweaks that we do have to handle.
Yeah. Overall, though, with the current systems we have, I'm not too worried about scheduling. I already know the systems we have currently in place will function the way we want them to. My big concern
player
is
DM groups will take a ton of the weight off.
indeed. My big concern though would be we will want to have a backup as a Google Sheet or something of that nature, because I'm sure the bot will go down at some point and we'll be shit out of luck if we don't have a backup.
I think the bot will be okay in the long
Back
run.
to the Stone Age, baby.
yeah. I think the bot will be okay as long as we don't have a another spirit bomb episode like we did in Verum.
Yeah.
I well, we went through what, 4 bots that day?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Yeah, it could have been better. Could have been worse. Could have been much, much worse. Alright. That,
Okay, next one is let me check.
alright. For updating character sheets, definitely should be on the players themselves to update their own character sheets. And following along with the previous rules, if they enter into a game and there's something missing from their character sheet, generally would be missing from their inventory. Unless the DM's feeling kind. But you know. General rule of thumb, if it's not on the sheet, they don't have access to it. Documentation should be living world server side, if any. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
What sort of stuff should be also documented/logged on our end for verification, essentially? Anything that you'd consider notable enough for that, like magical items, XP, inventory, so on. Or do you want it all to be player side and just verify through games and whatnot if need be?
I think having the XP and level tracked would be helpful. Knowing where magical items are would also be helpful. And then, just for purposes of data, because I know we have a lot of data nerds and on the staff team, and I'm also kind of curious myself. Having like who's playing what class, who's playing what race, um, things of that nature would be helpful. Also, help us determine if some races or classes or feats or spells even could use a buff or adjustments. Because if like one race is being overly powerful or overly chosen, we know it might be needing a nerf, or maybe just it's really fancy race. You know, things of that nature. Yeah. As for inventory, though, we don't need to track their specific inventory. If it comes down to it, and player is caught cheating with their inventory, then we'll obviously have issues there. But overall, I don't think it's going to be an issue. Especially since players will be more geared towards their individual groups, so the DM themselves would be able to determine if you know they're fudging information on their sheets or whatnot. Yeah. I would have character sheets. At the very least, visible to the DM team, whether that's posted in uh, that group's DM channel or in a administration channel as well as that group's DM channel. That way, if we absolutely need to have access to their character sheet, we'll have a link for it in administration team. But the DMs who is playing with that group should have access to their character sheet. If they want allowances for hidden items or that nature, that is something I'd certainly be okay with. They can make a secondary like inventory sheet. I'm not against having anything of that nature, or like a secondary backstory sheet that they would send in. They want to keep that stuff secret, just so long as it is accessible. But we should have essential character lists with links to sheets, yes. Especially if players are going to have multiple for like hidden item allowances or secret informations on them. Access limitation to that should be to the team who handles going through the backstories, as well as administration. So I'd put it under the administration folder in the Google Drive, essentially, and then give it a subfolder which would have expanded access. People other than myself and the admin team.
Also regarding documentation, honestly it boils down to, do we want to be proactive and make it harder for people to cheat in the first place, but also add burden on our end since we need to document some stuff, or do we want to just hope that it won't happen, which in the vast majority of cases it won't be.
I think overall we don't need to worry about it too much. It'll be more of a if the DM at the time catches anything, then we'll get to it. But I'd prefer to err on the trusting of players side rather than the watching them like a hawk side. Because watching them like a hawk side builds mentality of it's DM versus players, rather than we're all here just to have fun and play a
And
game.
neither is really a bad option. Makes it less stressful on us too.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Alright. Going back up. Let's go world progression up. In that case. Alright. Storyline focused, NERP, campaign focused, free for all the above, none of the above. I would say it would be uh, regional story focus, but it's could be more of a worldly focus as the DM team itself sees fit. So, for example, if we want to have a world-altering event, we might have a campaign
Missed
focus.
one more for documentation. Last one.
Token creation standards, format spell, as you mentioned, working on one previously related. Standardized formatting on macros, limitations, restrictions. I know we've been working on some standardized macros and things of that nature. Saphira Phoenix has got a lot of spell library stuff that will just click of a button give it access to the entire even homebrew spell library that we have. So that should standardize things in that regard. In terms of like, oh, here's my class ability. I'm okay with players just having a macro that they make themselves for a class ability, but we should have some form of players must use our pre-designed attack macros, pre-designed spell macros, and things of that nature. Simply because they themselves are being designed in a way that makes it really easy to just build, even if you don't know how to make or use macros. And they're also built in the correct way. You know, they don't have any like errors or glitches in them that will cause a macro to break or anything of that nature, which is a potential for opening up a wider macro creation to the public. So overall, they should use the campaign macros that we'll be providing, but if they want to make custom ones for more specific things that are not related to those campaign ones, they're free to do so. I believe part of the library that they've been working on is racial benefits as well. Yeah, like macros that activate racial effects.
We will 100% see Frankenstein macros like we did in Verum.
Mm-hmm.
Like people like Zahudi who had like all of their ranger shit in one macro for a shot, things like that,
Yeah,
which isn't bad. It helps the bloat, especially since this time around people have more options for stuff,
mm-hmm.
given being able to take feats every third level and more um, room to customize.
Indeed. But with all the homebrew mechanics that the different people who have been helping out with have been working on, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Is they'll have access to this massive library, and they'll basically just be like a click of a button to give your character your token access to them.
Hello?
Hello.
I I guess relate to that macro thing. About my modifications, a lot of them are related to formatting as well. So I feel like I should probably at least give you a very brief overview of
Formatting guide.
uh so if I could screen share, I guess, or
Go
should
ahead.
Okay. All right. So before I get started, I should mention this isn't use Syrik as the base, but the modifications I made are optimized to how I run the campaign to how I run my campaigns. So some of the things may be slightly odd, but
Mhm.
as you can see, this is the DM view, and the way I have everything set up is the GM panel has like a bunch of common macros. Like for example, there's a managed health, D20 checks, D20 saves. Those are like things on every single mob macro, so I just offloaded it onto the GM macro so that mob tokens can only have like abilities. I don't actually have a mob example, but uh, yeah. But for players, this is what a player looks like, and sidebar here is like this thing pops up. You press F5 on your token, it prints out like hit points, armor class, blueprint, etc., and it even changes in real time.
That's
Example like
freaking
that.
cool.
Indeed.
Thanks. And yeah, and here is a guess input field where you could like change like how much money you have, and here's a demonstration of a slot-based inventory system
Mhm.
demonstration here, and yeah, and here's an inventory. Oh yeah, this little player panel has like separate tabs. Like there's the main one, there's inventory, and if you click on these, then it prints it on chat to show it.
Mm. Very nice. Very nice.
Uh, as for abilities, let me expand this. Actually, let me swap windows for a moment. Because I'm on the oh, actually no, I'm on the player GM view right now. So let me show you what a player viewpoint looks like. Uh, or actually, uh, Control EF. Guy, right now. Uh, this thing does take a moment to load, but so here's a demonstration of this Goblin Wizard. Oops. If I press F5, it automatically impersonates the token, so that when I deselect it, I could like still available. So
Mhm.
it's in. the demonstration of ability is like, for example, use Firebolt. And when I click Firebolt on the left, another panel pops up called the reference panel, which prints out like what the spell does. In the case of Firebolt, it's very simple. So there's that, and here's the basic ability. And there's even a link here that other players can click to see what the ability does.
Yes, very nice. Very nice.
And I guess there's one more thing of note. AoE abilities, like for example, Shatter. Well, here's a spell. It shows. Yeah, side note, I use all points in my games because it's easier to program than spell slots. But anyways, you can see standard panel over here, and I cast it, then it prints. Well, it creates a AoE template for the player to move around and position. Ooh. And also, one more note: I don't use snap to grid in my games, so that's why it's a circle and not But you can definitely make this a grid, but thing. And AoE template, you can also press F5 to like view the details of it. This is most important for like continuous effects, like hold person. Yeah, it generates this thing. We press F5, then it's like reminds you like what save is, what it applies, and when to like repeat it. I haven't really been able to use this in practice, so I don't know how well the system works, but it does that. And also one more thing, if you click F5 is like a universal key that you just click on a token and you hit it, and then it prints out like information on the here. This also applies to mobs as well, or NPCs. And back to the character sheet. There's a section down here that prints out like all the states that the token is afflicted with.
I like how it gives the state symbol as well.
Yeah, and I guess currently the only thing left in this system from Syrik are all the states. So, but I think that's the bulk of the changes. And also, if I go to the campaign macro or campaign panel, which is available to both players and DMs, I could click here and it prints out information. And this information panel can contain anything, any kind of information you want. That's everything. Oh yeah, world map. I was considering turning this into a mini map type system, but basically, mini maps are doable, and
very nice, very nice.
Yeah. Let's see what else is there. Swapping back to the DM viewport. There's a door, I guess. Well, actually, it's better on the other map, I guess. Demonstration. Engine blocking layers, but let me on. This is a door right here.
Very nice. Knew that macro existed. I just never got around to do it myself. So good stuff.
Yep. Code. And currently, I don't have it programmed so that players will be able to open and close them. But currently, only DM can do that. But that has all kinds of things that you can do with it. I think I may have showed this off another time, but yeah, these are markers I made to just help me run stuff. I think I showed off a NPC generator and a mob generator another time before.
Yeah, I remember that.
And here's a form that you can use to edit it. So, mob version does that as well. Mob. And I'm currently pressing the F keys on my keyboard since I have it linked to that. So, this thing and the editor works now.
Ooh, very nice.
Hold on, editor. Yeah, here's the editor. It's currently optimized to how I run it, although I haven't really gotten a chance to try this thing out with my players since they haven't fought anything after I made this. But also you have a macro here that can give macros to there's things like just gave this thing a basic attack macro from this macro.
Hmm.
I think that's like the bulk of the changes I made.
Yeah.
I make. So if you want, I could explain like how everything is programmed, because like in pressing the F keys, it's connecting to the macros on the side here,
Mhm.
and how these work is they call other macros located in all of these libraries, and
Yeah.
and then from there's like 3 different layers to it.
I can
But,
imagine this is a fairly in-depth system so far, so it's good stuff.
yeah, so that's what's programmed, I guess. But I think the main thing I wanted to really show you was, I guess, the side panel UI, which
Mhm.
can really help with displaying information. Like, I think earlier I may have commented that some of the what do they call it, generators or old tables,
Mhm.
encounter tables.
Yeah.
Encounter tables could be plugged in, and the way that would be done is, well, through this panel where the DM could just like press a button on the GM panel, and they would fill out the form, and then it would be printed out in this panel, and it wouldn't be done like it wouldn't be printed out in chat. It would be printed out in this window, which is easy to read, and the GM can also hide it from the players. So
Mhm.
yeah, so that's the idea of these changes. And on an additional note, I guess there's also the formatting of spells, because for example, Firebolt, it's like one of my issues I had with some previous other versions of Syrik was like you clicked on a spell, it prints out like the whole description, even though the whole description isn't necessarily needed to understand how the spell works. So
Yeah.
I only print out the bare minimum, which is like macros, damage rolls, and the
Mhm.
like complex details can be relegated to like this details button here, which prints out this thing. Prestidigitation, really. There's like all the options of prestidigitation, which isn't printed out in chat.
Mhm.
Players get the option to like, customize it. Yeah.
Yeah. This solid stuff. I really like the information panel it's got going. Definitely uh, a major update since you last showed me this. So
Yeah.
the character sheet you have going on the left side when you have token selected definitely is more visually friendly than the stat sheet that is base actual.
I also tried linking it in such a way so that when a player clicks on a token, it does it automatically, but I don't know how to do that. So players have to press F5 all the time if they want to like constantly update this, which I don't think my players have gotten used to doing that yet. So I'm not sure if they like do it a lot,
Mhm.
or if at all. If you want, you could I guess send a copy of the framework over to Phoenix. I think. So one more comment. This is color coded, so
That is totally what?
uh, keywords are color coded. Like for example, with damage types,
Nice,
status
nice.
types. I actually have a key here, like what I keyed everything to.
Mhm.
Although currently it's not very optimized, as I think it might be better to do it in CSS, so that if you want to change like the color from dexterity from pink to green, then you change the CSS and it applies to everything, so you don't have to write all the
Yeah,
macros.
yeah.
That but yeah, I have a key for my thing, and I think Syrik props could probably use that as well.
Mhm.
So
Indeed.
yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, it's good stuff. Stuff
UI
indeed.
stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, there's also the arrangement of everything.
Mhm. Yeah, we'll need to start bringing through that and get it into the Syrik framework.
Yeah, and let's see what else was there. I think there was one more thing. What was it? I guess pause, but that's not really.
Mhm.
What was I gonna say? Yeah, this thing. fitting reference for how I coded all the macros or abilities and stuff.
Mm.
So yeah, that's the framework generally.
Yeah. Very good, very good. It's shiny indeed.
Any questions or comments?
Overall, I mean, obviously you're working on it for your own systems, and
Yeah.
there are changes between our systems as well. But
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that you
I
had.
forgot to show him the campaign properties actually, but
Yeah.
actually I could show it.
I did notice that you have comments in your macros themselves, so that's exceedingly helpful. Help me be able to transfer them to the Syrik framework without issue.
Although the thing is, if you place like brackets inside comments, it doesn't actually comment out the brackets. But I don't think it's in all of them though. So
yeah, but
so
my thing is that if you don't have comments in certain macros, not a big issue, especially if they're fairly straightforward. But it would be helpful to have comments in all of them. That way, I know what you're really getting at in terms of your coding. So when I do transfer it over, I can adjust it as necessary to add, for example, ballistic damage type, because I noticed you didn't have that as a damage type.
Ballistic damage types?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so if you look at the state what was the states panel, I actually removed all the custom Syrik stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use it in my campaign, but another thing I wasn't necessarily satisfied with in Syrik was like I remember like mod props and quad props like base attributes don't have the same name, so macros are actually incompatible between the two for some reason, which kind of bothered me a little. But
yeah,
changed it in my system so that the names between players and mobs are at least the same, so the macros are compatible with each other. Yeah. For all the formatting stuff, you said someone was working on like a spell library, right?
Yeah. Saphira Phoenix.
What was their name?
Saphira Phoenix.
Phoenix. Phoenix. I guess. Are they in the Syrik server?
Check. Dual servers. Yes, they are. They are in the Syrik server.
Let's not be spelling it right then. Because it's like, if so, it's like
It is Sappphira. There you go.
Pura Phoenix. There it is. So should I like reach out to them and just send a framework, or possibly assist with the UX testing of all their macros?
Sure, they
Since,
wouldn't mind
macros
some extra help and some
something
coordination.
like that. So I can't exactly do it right now. I actually got a game in like 45 minutes.
No worries.
But,
it's all good.
if you want, you could I guess send a message for me or something, or should I just do it myself?
I mean, if you get to it first, no problem. I'll probably won't be able to actually respond to their message just yet because I have a game soon and I got more schoolwork involved. But when I do message them, I will mention the potential collaboration.
All right.
But other than the basic, more comments are good. Help me with the transfer.
Right.
No additional comments at this point in time. Is just looking solid. Nothing seems to immediately jump out as how does this work, or how can this be altered in any way? Because just.
Wait, I forgot to mention the tables. I have a really strange table naming scheme. Oh yeah, also global macros. Some of the stuff I have are on global macros, and those don't save on campaigns.
Yep. Yep, those are personalized to your computer.
Yep. One of them was a macro that allows you to like print out all the tables that you have on the campaign, and that's it's gonna be very useful.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna go prepare, but
Right.
I guess thanks for listening to the framework presentation.
Yeah, no problem. Enjoy your game.
Good work.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Later.
Good job. Let's see here. Marriage, yeah, that can happen. Lineages could happen as well. Progeny can happen as well. Inheritances. Now that's where things get a little interesting. Because obviously playing one character and then coming in with a level 1 child of another character with the entire suite of the old character's stuff, that is where it gets a little interesting. I think we should have some rule sets involved with that.
I don't think we have systems for any of those yet, at least no Syrik specific ones.
Yeah, none.
So I just put a stuff to consider later next to it.
Gotcha.
But you do want all of these mechanics in some form, right?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for inheritance, just since I have the idea in my head right now, I think for them, custom birth traits to be added. So like if you are the child of, I don't know, Brognak the Barbarian, the player who decided to play a character from Fallout, then you would be able to choose, instead of birth, the normal, gentry, commoner, mage, warrior, all those other options. You could choose Grognak's heir or something like that as a birth trait, and then it would have some stuff involved with it that would be based upon our inheritance system that we would design. Just top of the head idea for that. Back up there to the listings of list stuff. Moderation, limitation of behavior, investigation, action protocol, standard, community versus living world violations, liberation checks, and balances. I know we currently have a rule system already set up under the server rules and guidelines. At this point in time, I mean, it's been doing its job thus far. No one's really been breaking any rules, but we haven't really been exactly a hopping server. So, I think that one definitely could use a deeper discussion with the moderation team, especially the closer we get to launch, when moderation will be most certainly more needed than it is now. Overall, I don't have a lot of experience in the moderation side of things, so that would be definitely more of a discussion with the full group, just so I can get.
Don't worry, we'll go over that next. But first, world progression.
Yes. World progression. Yeah, no. World progression is should be focused on regions, storylines themselves, and expanded outwards towards worldly stuff as necessary, but generally will be focused on the region for each region. So, one region will probably have their own focus, while another will have their own. It will obviously have personal player storylines involved as well, but the overarching themes will be centralized to those regions. as an example of potential players, like, just go get your wording for it specifically so I can say proper. Like a free for all sort of thing, or a party specific progression. I would say for those things, it would be more on the DM themselves if they want to do anything of that nature. So, for example, if the DM is, having their party running games for them, and something happens with one of the party members where a story beat occurs within their backstory in the campaign. If the DM wants to pursue that, they are welcome to, or if the player wants to pursue that, they are welcome to. I am open to running players design content or player specific content. I don't want to be like, no, gatekeeping you from doing anything related to your character. So if players want to do such things, then I'm all for it. Yeah, pretty much. But when designing content, we should be keeping in mind the region itself. Hence why the regional story focus. Oh yeah, definitely. Regarding item creation, pets, etc., those systems will be implemented already. So, like, DMs themselves will be able to fall into those guidelines and then make items for it as necessary. Because part of the missions structure itself, which can fall under player-specific content, they'll still fall under the guidelines of here's what you can provide, here's all these other things that can occur, and so on and so forth. And in terms of like custom pets, I already have a system in place. At this point, I'm going to be sprucing
Right,
up.
we'll have automated systems for people to do directly and not need to hand it off to dedicated crafters except for more unique stuff.
Yep.
You'll just need specific guidelines for at what point you need to ask about it.
Yeah. For what point people would need to ask about these things, I would say, if the effect itself is beyond the traditional scope of our guide. Because for the most part, the guide itself will have the majority of effects players will want to have. Like if they want to have a flaming sword that can be let go and begins to float on its own accord and
If you
swing
can't
around.
create it within the limit or it's something unique effect, ask about it and we can have a whole process to go through that.
Yes. Because overall, the system will be able to just build everything, and it'll have the rule sets, the DCs involved, how long it will take, all these other mechanics. Bot can even have it be automatically clicked by a player, and it will run it for us, and it'll build the item. We'll check their DCs, especially if we have Avra integration, and we wouldn't really have to do anything on our end. Staff roles. That's fair. Yeah. The staff tag itself is just anyone who is working to help out the living world has the tag. So that's kind of already there, but solidifying it could work just fine. Trading, NPC, shopping, economy, country, Does departments already cover like the ones we currently have, like divinity, political, all that good stuff?
Up.
Let's see, login data tree would essentially fall under the character sheet approval, backstory stuff, feature development. That's covered, yeah. I mean, economy is kind of already combined with shopping and trading. That's more of a one thing, but I mean, it's easy enough to separate them out for clarity. NPCs is covered by RP events or the DMs themselves. Yeah, pretty much that. Yep. That is an accurate description. Indeed, yes, we can go over that later. And that is an accurate description of that. Yes, that. That is my view of what should occur with RP events, especially since they're going to be dealing with more mechanics than usual. Though I know Shrub wants most RP events to be mechanic free, like less focus on mechanics and more on the RP side of things. So they don't need to deal with it as often, but them having the knowledge and the skill set, definitely something that they should have.
True. The RP event assistant under the volunteers for people who want to be able to help /play NPCs /RP within events but defer to the writer /creator who has the full training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That would definitely be something to consider during discussions. I am in favor of allowing said character slot addition, though. I mean, that's just more games being able to be run.
Anything else you can think of under these?
Let's see here. Hmm. So you got RP events covered, you got the different departments covered, you got the dungeon masters, the part-time, the full-time, assistants, region heads, mission writers, staff in general. Seems like every role. I think that covers it, yeah.
Think a big clarification here is that development isn't something intrinsically part of DM anymore. It can be much more clearly defined as part of a volunteer category, but the two aren't exclusive anymore, so if you want to run games and also create items, you can be both a volunteer and a DM.
Indeed. Let's see here.
One more big thing for staff roles coming up: aspirants.
Applicants works for me. I mean, aspirants also work for me, but if we want to get away from the old server's naming scheme, then applicants works for me.
Yeah, we could go just basic and do the good old trial whatever. Trial volunteer, trial DM too.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Though, I think applicants is easier. That way we just need one role. Keeps it simple. Always roll bloat.
True, and then they can specify what they want to train for, and then that can just get logged in the training sheet.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Cause again not mutually exclusive, so easy peasy.
Mm-hmm. That's true. The current system regarding volunteers in general is just to send them towards the department heads of the various departments and have them show them the path they're wanting to do. I think having a more in-depth system than that would be beneficial,
General guidelines will be good.
Yeah. Overall, though, I think for the general guidelines would be something to get from the region heads themselves, or the department heads themselves, as they are the ones who know what
At the very
is
least,
required.
having an orientation to remind them, hey, this is how you recuse.
Indeed. Looks good. Yep, that's currently how it's set up to be. DM-based modifiers should be applied, such as if the mission itself is a faction mission, then it should have priority for faction members, or outright can't be run without at least one faction member. If it has priority for certain classes or things of that nature, basically akin to the old priority choice system. Otherwise, yeah, that looks good so far.
Oh yeah, I have the vote still. I'll grab that data again later, but if I remember correctly, it was most in favor of DMS being able to prioritize with justification, and remove a player with justification.
Yep, that is what I recall as well.
Up final one was DMS can choose to remove or replace any member of a party that they are assigned. This needs to be logged with the reasons. Do a revote before release, but we have our current baseline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know how necessary a revote will be, but definitely should have one just to make sure everyone's still on the same page.
Up that one specifically was a close vote, so we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
EM team might change a lot between now and then.
It's true. It's true.
Last one.
Mm-hmm. Um, that. No, I think that about covers it. A solid rundown, indeed.
Sweet. Great discussions. We've basically got a roadmap now to reference. If you think of anything that's missing or you're thinking of afterwards, just throw it at me whenever and I'll figure out where it slots in.
Yep, will do. Indeed, indeed. All right. Good stuff.
Thanks for the time and help.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate you doing all the work too. It's all good stuff. Mm-hmm.